The grand hall of Eldrith Palace gleamed under the flickering light of hundreds of golden torches. Outside, the wind howled through the jagged cliffs, carrying with it the promise of a storm. Inside, nobles moved with grace and precision. There, laughter polished but hollow, their smiles hiding ambition sharper than any dagger. The scent of wine and roasted meats mingled with faint traces of incense, creating a strange mixture of warmth and unease. At the far end of the hall, by a long table draped in deep crimson silk, she sat alone. Lady Seraphine Marrow's delicate. Hands rested on her lap, her posture impeccable despite the knot of unease twisting in her chest. The wedding had been the talk of the kingdom for weeks, a union meant to strengthen alliances, yet she felt like a shadow among the glittering gowns and embroidered coats. Whispers swirled around her, noblewomen comparing jewels, noblemen exchanging. Veiled threats, all oblivious to her silent observation. She had long since learned that court life was a game of appearances. One misstep, one word uttered at the wrong time, could destroy a family's reputation. So she sat quietly, watching, listening, absorbing the subtle power plays around her. Yet tonight, despite her usual composure, she felt a strange unease, as if the air itself carried a warning. Then, the doors of the hall burst open. The heavy oaken doors groaned as they swung wide, and a hush fell over the crowd. Torches flickered. As a shadow moved through the doorway, a figure tall, broad, impossible to ignore. Even from where she sat, Seraphine could feel the shift in the atmosphere, a tangible pull of power that seemed to bend the very air around him. He was the Lycan king, known to all as Callan, lord of the northern forests and ruler of a people who lived between human and beast. Rumors whispered of his savage strength, his feral instincts, and his unyielding will. He was said to be untouchable, untamed, and dangerous to anyone who dared approach him without caution. Yet here he stood, every eye in the hall fixed on him, the very air trembling with his presence. Callan's gaze swept the hall like a hunting hawk, sharp and calculating. Then, unexpectedly, it landed on her. Seraphine's breath caught. There was something in the way he looked at her, not hunger, not threat, but a command, a curiosity, a pull that she could not name. Slowly he stepped toward her, his long cloak brushing the floor, the movement deliberate, mesmerizing. When he reached her, the murmurs had grown into a tense silence. He leaned slightly, his voice low but carrying effortlessly through the hall. "Act like you're with me." The words were simple, almost casual, yet their weight pressed on her chest. To accept meant stepping into a storm, risking scandal, and drawing every pair of eyes upon her. To refuse might provoke his wrath, and she had heard enough stories to know that the Lycan King's temper was a force of nature. Seraphine hesitated, her mind racing. She had always been careful, calculated, but something in the intensity of his gaze made hesitation impossible. With a measured breath, she placed her hand lightly in his. The hall of Eldrith seemed to exhale, 1,000 eyes following their movements with fascination, envy, and fear. As Callan led her through the hall, nobles whispered behind fans and hands, their words sharp but powerless. "She is with him. The Lycan King chose her? Danger follows her now." Yet Seraphine's attention was fixed entirely on him. There was a rhythm to his movement, a subtle strength that both frightened and intrigued her. His hand was firm yet gentle, and in that contact she felt the faintest pulse of something ancient, something wild and enduring. They reached the center of the hall, where the music of the wedding faltered into an awkward silence. Guests parted instinctively, as though instinct recognized power. Callan's eyes swept the room once more, scanning, evaluating, yet never letting go of her hand. "Do not fear them," he said, and for the first time, his voice carried a softness that did not fit with his fearsome reputation. "Fear is a luxury we cannot afford tonight." She nodded subtly, though inside, her heart thumped like a drum. Her pulse was not fear, at least not entirely, but a strange, thrilling awareness that her world had shifted in an instant. Courtiers, the nobles, the schemers, they all seemed like actors on a stage. And for the first time, she had been pulled into a role not of her choosing, yet one she could not resist. The music resumed, hesitant at first, then stronger as the orchestra caught the rhythm of the moment. Kaelin guided her through the dance floor with effortless precision. Every step, every turn, was charged with silent tension. Some of the noblemen's eyes narrowed, some of the noblewomen's lips pressed tighter, yet none dared intervene. The Lycan King's presence demanded respect, and in that presence, she felt both exposed and protected. As they moved, he whispered low, almost to himself, "You are not like the others." She tilted her head slightly, unsure if it was meant for her ears alone. "What do you mean? You watch, you see, you understand. And yet you fear nothing. Most are blind to what waits in the shadows. You are not." The words sent a shiver down her spine. She had spent years learning the rules, the masks, the games. And here, in one moment, he had seen through all of it. She felt both seen and vulnerable, a dangerous combination that made her heart race and her mind reel. The dance ended too soon, the music fading as quickly as it had begun. Yet Kaelin did not release her hand. He looked into her eyes with a mix of amusement and calculation, and for a moment the room fell away. Only the two of them existed in that suspended space, a balance of tension and curiosity that neither could deny. Suddenly, the doors at the far end of the hall opened once more. A figure, cloaked in black and moving with the certainty of someone who knew their way through power, stepped inside. Eyes darted, whispers returned, and a subtle undercurrent of threat wove through the room. Kaelin's jaw tightened, the feral edge of his nature flashing in his amber eyes. Seraphine noticed it too, the slight curl of his lips, the tension in his stance. For the first time, she understood why rumors called him dangerous, why tales of his wrath were told with fear. Yet she did not flinch. Somehow, she trusted that, even in the storm to come, she would not be abandoned. The mysterious figure paused at the center of the hall, eyes flicking toward Seraphine. A faint smile touched the corners of their lips, one that promised mischief, manipulation, and perhaps betrayal. Kaelin's grip on her hand tightened slightly, a silent warning and reassurance all at once. Seraphine's pulse quickened. She realized the night was no longer just a wedding. It had become a battlefield of power, of secrets, of something far older and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And standing beside her, the Lycan King was both her shield and the storm itself. As the first lightning split the sky outside, illuminating the hall in brief, ghostly light, Kaelin leaned close. His breath was warm, his voice low. "Tonight, nothing is as it seems. Trust me, or do not. But remember, the world will watch us both. And some are already wishing you harm." Seraphine swallowed hard, a mixture of fear and thrill curling inside her. She could not walk away, now not from him, not from the force that had entered her life like a shadow wrapped in fire. She nodded once, small but resolute. The music faltered again, uncertain, as though sensing the tension that now pulsed like electricity through the hall. The courtiers whispered. The storm outside grew louder, and in that moment, Seraphine realized one undeniable truth. Her life, her fate, was forever entwined with the Lycan King. And as Kaelin's amber eyes held hers, sharp and commanding, she knew this night was only the beginning. The doors behind them creaked ominously, and a faint sound of claws scratching against stone echoed from the corridors beyond. Something was moving in the shadows, something patient, watching, waiting. Seraphine's heart skipped a beat. The Lycan King's hand tightened over hers, and he murmured, almost as a warning and promise both. Stay close. The darkness has only begun. Outside, thunder rolled, and the storm announced that nothing would remain the same after this night. The storm outside raged with unrelenting fury, rain lashing the palace walls, wind howling through the battlements. Inside, the warmth of torches could not dispel the chill that had settled in Lady Seraphine's chest. The whispers of the court still lingered in her mind, their murmurs of envy and suspicion a constant echo. Yet, she no longer felt entirely alone. The Lycan king, Kalen, guided her silently through winding corridors, his hand firm yet gentle on hers. The hall seemed endless, shadows stretching unnaturally as they moved. Tapestries of battles long past swayed slightly, as if alive. Seraphine's eyes traced the intricate details. Dragons locked in eternal combat, wolves howling at moonlit skies, kings and queens frozen in frozen glory. There was an otherworldly beauty in these halls, but also a sense of waiting and awareness. That the walls themselves had seen betrayals, secrets, and bloodshed. Finally, they arrived at a set of double doors, larger than any she had seen before, carved from dark wood and inlaid with silver. Kalen pushed them open with ease, revealing a chamber that seemed to exist out of time. The room was enormous, yet intimate, with shadows curling into corners and flickering candlelight dancing on the polished floor. A hearth glowed at one end, though the fire seemed reluctant, as if aware of the tension in the air. "This is the Wolf's Court," Kalen said, his voice low, carrying authority yet not unkindness. Few are allowed here, and fewer still survive the judgment of its walls. Seraphine stepped inside cautiously, her senses alert. She noticed the faint scent of wild forests, of earth and rain, as though the very air had been brought in from the northern woods. Her eyes widened slightly at the intricate details. The throne of carved oak at the far end, shaped like intertwined wolves, their amber eyes seeming to glow in the candlelight. Tapestries depicting the history of the Lycan people, battles fought, and victories earned through both cunning and strength. Kalen's gaze followed her, unreadable. "Do not be afraid," he said, sensing the tension coiling in her body. "This is my world. It is strange, perhaps frightening, but it is honest. There is no pretense here, only truth." Seraphine swallowed, nodding. The truth was not simple. She could feel it in the way the shadows moved, in the faint hum of power that seemed to vibrate through the room. Something deep and ancient resided here, a presence that demanded respect. And yet, in Kalen's presence, she felt a strange sense of protection, as though the storm outside could rage endlessly, and he would be her shield. As they moved further into the chamber, he stopped and gestured toward a large balcony overlooking the northern forests. Rain cascaded down in sheets, and the wind tore at the edges of the stone, carrying with it the wild scent of pine, earth, and untamed wilderness. "Do you see?" he asked, voice softer now. "This is where my people live, where my heart belongs. And yet, even here, danger is never far." She followed his gaze, the vast expanse of dark trees stretching into the distance, shrouded in mist. Her breath caught. The forest seemed alive, as if it had a will of its own, and somewhere beyond the reach of sight, unseen creatures moved with purpose and grace. She felt the thrill of danger, a sharp awareness that life outside the court was raw, unpredictable, and beautiful in its peril. "Your people," she began hesitantly, unsure what to say. "They are wolves?" Kalen's lips curved slightly in a rare smile, though his eyes remained intense. "Some of them are," he said, voice tinged with a hint of pride and sorrow. "Some are more human than wolf, and some are neither. My duty is to protect them, to guide them, and to prevent the darkness from claiming what is ours." Seraphine nodded, absorbing his words. There was something noble about the weight he carried, a mixture of responsibility and burden that few could comprehend. And yet, beneath that weight, there was a flicker of loneliness, a hidden ache she could not name. Suddenly, Callan's expression shifted. His eyes narrowed, amber glowing faintly in the candlelight. "But beware," he murmured, almost to himself. "Even within these walls, not all are loyal. Betrayal can come from the most unexpected places." A shiver ran down Seraphine's spine. She had expected danger in the court, schemes among nobles, and political games. But there was something more here, something primal. She realized that survival required not just intelligence, but intuition, courage, and a willingness to face shadows that most dared not approach. "Tell me," she said quietly, "why did you choose me tonight?" Callan turned to her fully, his gaze piercing. "Because you do not fear me," he said simply. "Most see only the beast, the rumors, the danger. You see something more, and that matters more than you realize." She looked down, feeling a warmth in her chest she could not explain. It was not affection, not yet. It was recognition, understanding, the beginning of trust. And in this strange, dark world, trust was a rare commodity. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden movement at the edge of the balcony. Seraphine stiffened, her heart leaping into her throat. From the shadows, a figure emerged, draped in black, moving with silent precision. Callan's posture shifted instantly, a predatory grace settling over him like a second skin. "Do you see them?" he asked, voice low, tense. "They have been watching for some time. They believe they can strike without consequence, but they do not understand me or what I am capable of." Seraphine's hand trembled slightly as he placed a firm yet reassuring touch over hers. "Do not fear," he whispered. "Stay close, and nothing will harm you." She felt a mixture of fear and thrill, the kind that comes when one stands on the edge of a cliff, knowing the fall could be deadly, yet feeling alive in the vertigo. Something about him, the strength in his presence, the power in his restraint, made the world feel both dangerous and safe at once. The figure at the edge of the balcony paused, seemingly sensing Callan's attention. For a heartbeat, the wind carried their presence to her, a silent warning. Then they retreated, melting into the shadows like a ghost. Callan's amber eyes followed them until they disappeared entirely. "They will not stop," he said finally, voice calm but with an edge that made her stomach tighten. "They seek to test me, to see if I can be broken, but they do not understand loyalty or courage." Seraphine nodded, feeling the weight of the unspoken threat. She understood, in that moment, that being with Callan was not just a matter of proximity. It was a choice to face danger, darkness, and uncertainty head-on. And for reasons she could not fully explain, she did not wish to step away. Callan's hand remained on hers as he guided her toward a low table set with ancient maps and artifacts. "You must understand," he said, spreading the maps before her. "Our world is not what it appears to the eyes of mortals. Politics, alliances, power. They are all influenced by forces older than kingdoms, older than bloodlines. And soon, you will see why your presence here is not mere chance." Seraphine leaned closer, studying the maps, tracing lines with her finger. Territories marked with symbols she did not recognize, areas shaded in darkness, rivers twisting like silver snakes across the parchment. "It is vast," she murmured. "And dangerous," Callan nodded. "Yes, but so is the heart of every person here. And sometimes, the greatest danger comes from those who hide their intentions behind smiles and etiquette." Hours passed as he explained the delicate balance of power, the fragile alliances, and the ever-present threats that haunted his people. Seraphine listened, absorbing each word, feeling the thrill of knowledge mixed with the unease of realization. She was now a part of a world she had only glimpsed in whispers and rumors. A world where shadows held power and courage was tested in silence and in storm. As the night deepened, Kalen finally rose, moving toward the balcony once more. "You must rest," he said. "Tomorrow will bring challenges unlike any you have faced. But remember this, you are not alone." Seraphine followed, her gaze drawn to the storm beyond the walls. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest below in brief, ghostly flashes. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, answering the call of the storm. She shivered, not from cold, but from the knowledge that her life had changed forever. Callan's hand brushed hers as they stood together, overlooking the dark expanse. "The night is long," he said softly, "and the shadows watch. But as long as we stand together, we will face whatever comes." Her heart beat in rhythm with the storm, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She knew instinctively that the coming days would test her courage, her wit, and her heart. But in that moment, standing beside the Lycan king, she felt a spark of something new, a sense of purpose, of belonging, of a bond that could withstand even the darkness waiting to strike. And somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes watched, waiting for the moment when the first move would be made in a game of power, loyalty, and survival, where only the strongest hearts could endure. The morning sun struggled to pierce the storm clouds, casting a pale light across Eldrith Palace. Lady Seraphine awoke in a chamber she did not recognize entirely, though it was beautifully adorned with tapestries, carved wood, and a fireplace whose embers still glowed faintly from the night before. Her mind replayed the events of the previous evening, the grand hall, the Lycan king's commanding presence, and the strange, undeniable pull that had drawn her toward him. Kalen entered without knocking, as though his presence was a law unto itself. He moved with silent authority, yet his eyes softened when they landed on her. "The court will not forgive absence," he said, his voice calm but edged with warning. "Today, you will see why appearances are only the beginning." Seraphine dressed carefully, her fingers brushing over the intricate folds of her gown. She had spent her life learning how to move in the world of nobles. Yet now, under Callan's watchful gaze, she felt both exhilarated and apprehensive. Every step she took seemed heavier, every glance more significant. She realized she was no longer a spectator. She was a participant in a story far larger than herself, one written in shadows, power, and whispers of the past dot as they descended into the main hall. The courtiers and nobles already gathered, their faces a mixture of curiosity, envy, and fear. Seraphine noticed the subtle tension in the air, the way hands hovered near hidden daggers, the quick exchanges of glances, the forced smiles masking suspicion. She understood instinctively that every action, every word, every glance would be scrutinized. And yet, with Callan at her side, she felt a strange confidence she had never known before. "Stay close," he murmured, his amber eyes scanning the crowd. "Observe, learn, and above all, trust nothing without proof." Their presence caused a ripple through the hall. Whispers followed them like shadows. "The Lycan king has chosen her. She is with him. Does she know the danger?" The words were sharp, but meaningless, powerless against the weight of Callan's authority. They moved through the crowd, Callan's hand brushing against hers occasionally, a silent reminder of the bond that was growing between them. Seraphine felt her pulse quicken not from fear, but from the awareness of his strength, the magnetic presence that seemed to command attention without effort. He was dangerous, yes, but there was a restraint in him, a deliberate control that both intrigued and unsettled her dot by midday. They were called to a council chamber, where maps and parchments were spread across a long table. The nobles gathered around, their expressions polite but calculating. Callan stood at the head, his posture rigid, his gaze sharp. Seraphine took her place beside him, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. "A challenge approaches," Callan began, his voice steady. "Alliances shift, and some seek to exploit weakness. We must remain vigilant. His amber eyes flicked to Seraphine. Watch closely. Not everything is as it appears. Some dangers are masked by charm, and some betrayals are hidden behind loyalty. As he spoke, Seraphine studied the faces around her. She saw ambition, envy, fear, and calculation. She understood, suddenly, why Kaelin had chosen her. Her observations were keen, her mind quick, and she did not flinch under the weight of scrutiny. She had been trained to see what others missed, and now, that skill had value beyond the court's superficial games. Hours passed as they discussed the delicate balance of power. Seraphine noted subtle gestures, whispered words, and fleeting expressions. She saw a nobleman whose loyalty seemed sincere, but whose eyes betrayed hidden intentions. She noticed a noble woman whose smile hid venom, whose every motion was precise and measured. Every detail mattered, and Seraphine began to realize that survival in this world required not just courage, but awareness and cunning. During a brief recess, Kaelin led her to a balcony overlooking the northern forests. Rain had slowed, leaving a mist that clung to the trees. The world beyond the palace was wild, untamed, and yet beautiful. Seraphine could feel the power of the land, the life pulsing in every tree, every shadow, every movement she could just sense beyond sight. "Do you understand why I brought you here?" Kaelin asked, his voice low, almost intimate. "The court is a battlefield. The world is dangerous. And yet, strength is not always in force. It is in knowing, in seeing, in choosing wisely." Seraphine met his gaze. "I understand. I think." Kaelin's lips quirked in a rare, fleeting smile. "You do not yet. But you will. And soon, you will see that courage is measured not only by the battles we fight, but by the choices we make when fear is all around us." Their conversation was interrupted by movement in the shadows below the balcony. A figure emerged, silent, deliberate, and watching. Kaelin's posture changed instantly, the feral instinct beneath his human form surfacing for a heartbeat. His amber eyes flared with warning. "They test me," he murmured. "They want to see if the bond between us can be broken, if weakness can be exploited. But they do not know the strength of trust or of courage." Seraphine felt a thrill that mingled with fear. She realized that being with Kaelin meant stepping into danger willingly, accepting the unknown and the unpredictable. And yet, she did not hesitate. Somehow, she trusted him, even as the shadows watched and schemed. The figure below disappeared as silently as it had appeared, leaving only the whisper of movement and the faint sense of threat. Kaelin's hand rested lightly on her arm, a grounding force in the shifting tension. "Do not fear," he said. "The storm is not over, but together. We are stronger than any who would challenge us." As evening approached, the council reconvened. This time, with a celebration of minor victories, a feast that seemed both a reward and a warning. Seraphine noticed subtle exchanges. The touch of a hand on a dagger, the tilt of a head that communicated silent messages. The nobles played their parts perfectly, yet Seraphine understood the undercurrents that most ignored. Kaelin moved beside her, whispering observations, teaching her to read the room, to understand the delicate balance between trust and caution. Each word, each glance, was a lesson in survival and strategy. And yet, beneath the tension, there was an undercurrent of something more, a connection that neither dared name, but both felt. During the feast, a rival noblewoman approached, her smile sharp, her eyes calculating. Seraphine felt the subtle threat in her presence. The woman's voice was smooth, polite, yet beneath it was challenge and envy. Kaelin's hand tightened slightly on hers, a warning and reassurance. "You must be careful," he whispered. "Some seek to undermine, to provoke, to see fear in your eyes. Do not give them that satisfaction." Seraphine nodded. feeling a mixture of fear, determination, and something deeper, an awareness that her own courage mattered, that her choices could influence events in ways she had never imagined. She was no longer merely a noblewoman observing from the sidelines. She was a participant, a force in a game of shadows and power. And she had the Lycan King at her side. As the evening wore on, Kalen excused himself briefly, and Seraphine was left to navigate the whispers of nobles and the curious glances of those who had not yet understood her significance. She felt their scrutiny, their evaluation, and yet she did not falter. She had learned from Kalen, and she understood that power was as much about perception as it was about strength. When Kalen returned, he brought with him a new awareness in her, a recognition that survival, trust, and courage were intertwined. The storm outside had quieted, leaving only the distant rumble of thunder, a reminder that danger was never far. And as they stood together at the balcony once more, Seraphine realized that the bond forming between them was more than companionship. It was trust, understanding, and something that stirred her heart in ways she could not yet name. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the hall below, deliberate and silent. Seraphine's pulse quickened. Kellen's amber eyes flared, his posture shifting to the predator within. "They have returned," he said, voice low and steady. "And this time, they are closer than before." Seraphine felt the weight of the moment, the awareness that the danger was real, imminent, and unavoidable. And yet, she did not retreat. She would face it, not alone, but with Kalen, the Lycan King, whose presence was as much a challenge as it was a protection. The wind howled again through the palace, carrying the scent of the northern forests, the storm, and the unknown. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf answered the call, echoing the tension in her chest. She knew instinctively that the coming days would test everything: loyalty, courage, trust, and the fragile, burgeoning connection between her and the king. And as Kellen's hand found hers once more, guiding her through the shadows of the palace, she realized that nothing in her life would ever be the same. The storm was not over, the danger was real, and the dance of power and desire had only just begun. The night had fallen like a dark velvet curtain over Eldrith Palace, and the wind rattled the ancient windows as if announcing a challenge to anyone daring to remain inside. Lady Seraphine had grown accustomed to the palace's shadows, but tonight, every flickering candle and every subtle creak of the stone floor seemed to carry a whisper of danger. Her thoughts kept returning to the Lycan King, Kalen, whose amber eyes had haunted her since the first evening. The strength in his presence was undeniable, yet there was something beneath the surface, a struggle that she could not fully understand. Kalen found her in the library, seated at a heavy oak table, surrounded by stacks of parchment and books that detailed treaties, histories, and old legends of the Lycan people. His entrance was silent, almost predatory, yet he moved with a careful grace that softened his imposing presence. "You are learning quickly," he said, his voice low but steady, carrying that calm authority that always seemed to anchor her. "But knowledge alone will not protect you. You must understand intent, feel the weight of secrets, and recognize when the unseen hand moves against you." Seraphine looked up at him, her gaze steady. "I want to understand," she said, "even if it frightens me." Kellen's eyes softened, a flicker of something almost human passing over his features. "Courage is not the absence of fear," he said. "It is acting even when fear is present. You have that, though you may not know it yet." They spent hours together, studying old texts and maps, deciphering alliances and long-forgotten pacts. Kellen's explanations were precise, but it was not just the lessons that drew her in. It was the intensity in his gaze, the subtle touches of his hand when guiding her through complicated passages, the patience in his voice. Each interaction pulled her closer, threading a delicate bond between them, one that was both thrilling and terrifying. Then, without warning, A loud crash echoed from the main hall. Both Seraphine and Kalen froze, listening. The sound was followed by a low growl, primal and feral, vibrating through the walls. Kalen's eyes darkened, amber glowing with a warning light. "They are here," he said, his voice a dangerous whisper. "The curse, it has been stirred." Seraphine's pulse quickened. She had heard whispers of the curse that haunted the Lycan King's bloodline, a darkness that could take control of him, turning him into a force of destruction beyond measure. No one in the court had witnessed it fully. Only rumors spoke of its power and of the terror it unleashed. Kalen moved swiftly, guiding her to the balcony overlooking the hall. Below, shadows twisted unnaturally, as if the very air had become alive. Figures moved, deliberate and silent, testing, probing, waiting for the moment to strike. The palace seemed to hold its breath, caught between the normal world and something far older and wilder. "You must trust me," Kalen said, his hand gripping hers tightly. "The curse is awakening, and I cannot control it fully alone. But together, we can face it." Seraphine's heart raced, but she did not step back. She had chosen to stand beside him, and now she would. "I trust you," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. For a moment, Kellen's eyes softened, and then the change came. His posture shifted, muscles tensing, a low growl vibrating from deep within him. Fur seemed to ripple along his skin, his features sharpening, eyes glowing like molten amber. The Lycan King, the man she had begun to know, was now something more, a creature of power and fury, dangerous to behold and impossible to ignore. Yet, amidst the fear, Seraphine felt a strange calm. She had seen his humanity, glimpsed the man beneath the beast, and she knew, instinctively, that reaching him would require courage, patience, and a bond stronger than fear. "You are not lost," she whispered, stepping closer. "I see you. Not the curse, not the beast, you." Callan's growl faltered, his head tilting slightly as he focused on her voice. There was a tremor in his massive form, a struggle between the feral instincts and the man she had come to trust. She moved closer, placing her hand gently on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles, the pulse of life and power intertwined. "You are not alone," she continued, her voice steady, filled with conviction. "I am here. You do not have to face this alone." The moment stretched, charged with tension, as Callan's beastly form shivered under her touch. The curse had begun to consume him, testing his restraint, but her presence anchored him, reminding him of his humanity. Slowly his form began to shift back, the fur receding, features softening, the growl fading to a low rumble. He stood before her, human again, though every muscle remained taut with residual power. Seraphine exhaled, relief washing over her, mingling with the lingering thrill of danger. "It is done for now," Kalen said, voice hoarse but steady. "You have done more than anyone else could. You have reminded me of who I am, who I can be." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the bond between them solidified. It was not merely trust, but recognition, understanding, and a shared strength that neither had expected. Kalen reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, a gesture both tender and commanding. "You are stronger than you realize," he said. Seraphine felt warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief, admiration, and something deeper she could not yet name. The danger had not passed. The court still held secrets and schemes, but in that instant, she understood that their connection, fragile, powerful, and charged with trust, could face even the darkest of threats. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden noise, a soft, deliberate step from the shadows. Seraphine's pulse quickened. Callan's eyes sharpened instantly, amber glowing faintly as he scanned the room. A figure emerged, cloaked in black, moving with silent precision, eyes locked on them. "Who is that?" Seraphine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Callan's jaw tightened. "Someone from the past. Someone who seeks to undo everything. They know of the curse, and they wish to use it against me and against you." Fear and determination mingled in Seraphine's chest. She understood now that the danger was far from over. The court, the curse, the shadows, all of it was connected, and she was a part of it now, unwillingly and irrevocably. Callan stepped in front of her, his presence a shield, his body taut with readiness. "Do not move," he commanded, his voice low, lethal. "I will not allow harm to come to you. Not now, not ever." The figure paused, as if measuring, then retreated into the darkness, leaving only the faint echo of movement. Callan's gaze followed them, his shoulders tense, before he finally exhaled. "This is only the beginning," he said, voice heavy with warning. "The past is not done with me or with you." Seraphine's hand found his, gripping tightly. "Then we face it together," she said, determination hardening her tone. Callan nodded, his expression softening, yet still shadowed with the weight of his responsibilities and the curse that lingered. "Together," he agreed. "And remember, courage is measured not by what we fear, but by what we face despite it." As the night deepened, they remained on the balcony, watching the distant lightning streak across the northern forests, illuminating the wilderness in brief, ghostly flashes. The storm had passed, but the tension, the danger, and the shadows remained. Seraphine realized that her journey with the Lycan King was far from over. The court, the curse, and the enemies lurking in the dark would challenge them at every turn. Yet, in that moment, standing beside him, she felt something she had never felt before: hope. The hope that courage, trust, and the bond they shared could withstand even the darkest night, and that redemption, for both Callan and herself, was within reach. And as the moon rose over the palace, casting silver light across their faces, Seraphine knew that the coming days would demand all she had: her wit, her courage, and her heart. But for the first time, she was ready, for she was no longer alone. She had the Lycan King at her side, and together they would face whatever shadows awaited outside. The wind carried the distant howl of a wolf, answering the call of the storm, a reminder that danger lurked just beyond sight, and that the dance of power, trust, and desire was far from over. Dawn broke over Eldrith Palace, painting the ancient stone walls with shades of gold and rose. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and fragrant with pine and wet earth. Yet inside the palace, the tension of the night lingered like a shadow, weaving through every corridor and echoing in the quiet corners. Lady Seraphine moved carefully, her mind still alive with the events of the previous nights, the whispers, the danger, and the awakening of a bond that had grown stronger than she had ever imagined. Callan awaited her in the central hall, standing tall and commanding, yet softer than she remembered during the moments of tension. The amber in his eyes held a warmth now, tempered by the memory of the curse and the trials they had faced together. When he saw her, his lips curved slightly, the faintest acknowledgement of connection that had grown beyond words. "You are ready," he said, voice steady, carrying both authority and reassurance. "Today, you will see the outcome of the choices we have made." Seraphine nodded, feeling a mixture of determination and unease. The palace would not rest, nor would the forces that had tested them. But she had learned, and she had grown, and she no longer feared the unknown as she once had. The courtiers gathered once more, their whispers hushed, yet charged with curiosity. Eyes followed her, measuring, questioning, seeking the slightest sign of weakness. Callan stood beside her, a silent protector and a symbol of the strength she now shared. Together, they moved through the hall, each step deliberate, each glance commanding attention. At the heart of the palace, the council chamber awaited. Maps, Ancient texts and symbols of power were spread across the long table, a reminder of the delicate balance between alliances, loyalty, and ambition. Kalen gestured for Seraphine to stand beside him. "You have seen the shadows, the plots, and the dangers," he said. "Now, it is time to face them openly. We will not cower. We will meet the darkness together." The chamber doors opened, and the nobles entered, some with cautious respect, others with veiled challenge. Among them was the cloaked figure from the night before, now revealed a man whose loyalty had been divided, whose ambition had led him to seek the downfall of Kalen and to exploit the curse that haunted the Lycan king's bloodline. "You step into the light now," Kalen said, his tone cold and unwavering. "There will be no hiding, no deception. The truth is before us, and all will be judged accordingly." The man bowed slightly, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his confidence. "I serve the realm," he said smoothly. "I seek only order and balance." Kalen's amber eyes narrowed. "Balance built on deceit is no balance at all. You have tested loyalty, and now you will answer for it." Seraphine watched the exchange, noting the subtle reactions of the courtiers. She realized that strength was not only in power or titles, but in clarity, courage, and the willingness to face consequences. She felt the weight of the lessons Kalen had taught her, the importance of observation, the value of truth, and the unspoken bond that could guide actions when fear and doubt threatened to overwhelm reason. Kalen extended a hand toward her. "Now," he said softly, "you will speak if you choose. Speak not from fear, but from truth. Let your voice be heard." Seraphine drew a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the room, the tension that coiled like a living thing. Her heart beat steadily, anchored by the presence of Kalen at her side. She stepped forward, her voice calm, clear, and unwavering. "You have come seeking weakness," she said, addressing the cloaked man. "But you will find none here, not in Kalen, not in the realm, and not in the truth we share. The bonds we have formed are stronger than your plots, and your deception will fail." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Some courtiers exchanged whispered comments, others simply watched in silence, captivated by the courage and poise of the woman who had once been an outsider. The man's eyes flicked to Kalen, seeking support, but found none. Kalen's expression was unwavering, his presence a shield around her words, a testament to the strength of their shared bond. For a moment, the room seemed suspended in anticipation, waiting for the next move. Then, with a low growl that vibrated through the walls, Kalen's aura shifted. The Lycan King's presence, powerful and commanding, filled the chamber, a reminder that the curse, though fierce, was tempered by control and will. The man's confidence faltered, and the room held its collective breath. "You underestimated us," Kalen said, voice deep, carrying authority and warning. "But we do not falter. Not now, not ever. Your deceit ends here." The man bowed, finally acknowledging defeat, and the tension in the chamber began to ease. Whispers of admiration and awe replaced suspicion. Seraphine realized that their courage had not only protected them, but had strengthened the respect of those around them. The court had seen not just a king and a noblewoman, but a partnership founded in trust, courage, and unwavering resolve sought after the council. Kalen led Seraphine to the northern gardens, where the storm's remnants had left the flowers glistening with droplets, the paths gleaming under the morning sun. The air was alive with the scent of pine and wet earth, a reminder that life persisted even after turmoil. "You have done more than survive," Kalen said, his voice gentle, yet carrying the weight of his gratitude. "You have reminded me of my own strength, of my humanity, and of the power of trust. Without you, I would have faced the darkness alone." Seraphine looked at him, seeing the layers of strength, burden, and vulnerability intertwined. "We faced it together," she said softly, "and we will face whatever comes next together." Callan's eyes held hers, amber glowing faintly in the morning light. He stepped closer, a silent question in his gaze, an unspoken acknowledgement of the bond that had grown between them. Seraphine felt her heart quicken, the thrill of connection mingling with the serenity of understanding. "You have changed me," he said quietly, voice raw with honesty. "You reminded me that even amidst shadows, there can be light, trust, and redemption. And for that, I am grateful." Seraphine reached out, placing her hand on his arm, feeling the warmth, the strength, and the pulse of life that was both human and beyond. "And you have shown me courage," she said. "Not just in battle, but in every choice you make. In every moment you face the impossible and stand tall." A gentle breeze stirred through the gardens, carrying the scent of pine, rain, and new beginnings. Callan's hand covered hers, the gesture simple, profound, and unifying. In that moment, the world beyond the palace, the threats, the shadows, all seemed distant. There was only the bond they had forged, tempered by trials and strengthened by courage. They walked through the gardens in silence, each step deliberate, each glance acknowledging the shared experience of survival and trust. Seraphine felt the weight of the journey behind them, and yet a sense of hope stretched before them, a future uncharted, but bound by the strength of their connection. As they reached the edge of the gardens, where the first light of morning illuminated the distant forests, Callan turned to her. "The curse may never fully leave me," he said, voice tinged with solemnity. "But with you beside me, I am stronger than it, and stronger than any who would challenge us." Seraphine nodded, feeling the truth in his words. "Then we face it together," she said again. And this time, her voice carried not just courage, but certainty. Callan's hand found hers once more, fingers intertwining with hers, a promise of trust, protection, and partnership. "Together," he agreed. In the distance, the forest stretched endlessly, alive with the whisper of wind, the murmur of leaves, and the faint howl of wolves answering the dawn. The storm had passed, but the memory of its fury lingered, a reminder of danger faced and overcome, of bonds forged in shadow and strengthened by courage. Seraphine felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and something deeper, an acknowledgement of connection, trust, and the beginnings of love that had grown in the face of adversity. The palace, the court, the world beyond, they were all part of a story that had only just begun. A story of courage, loyalty, and the bond between a king and a woman who had chosen to stand beside him. Callan's amber eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "The night is behind us," he said softly, "and the dawn is ours to meet." Seraphine smiled, a quiet, serene smile, feeling the weight of fear and doubt lift from her shoulders. "Then let us meet it together," she said, her voice carrying certainty and hope. And as the first true rays of sunlight spilled across the palace and the gardens, illuminating the world with promise, they walked forward side by side, ready to face whatever challenges, shadows, and wonders awaited them, bound by trust, courage, and the bond that had grown stronger than any darkness could ever destroy.